you're not going to want to miss what I'm cooking today. Check this out. So normally I would go with something like my tried and true double indirect setup, which now thousands of you have let me know in the comments and emails that you are turning out the best barbecue you've ever made on your Kamado style grill. And if this is a new term to you, I have a resource on my website that gives you the complete how-to to do everything from the Joe Jr. to Series 1, 2, 3, Classic, and Big Joe. Every make and model that Kamado Joe currently sells, I put together a resource guidebook on how to pull that off. But I can't help remember back to last year where I did some rotisserie ribs, and those live fire ribs just had some extra flavor. And I loved everything about that cook, but the fact that I could only fit a single rack of ribs. That was the limitation of the rotisserie cook. And I've been racking the brain ever since then how I could get more of that live fire experience with some of the fat drippings rendering down into the coals and coming back up and imparting some amazing flavor, but fit more ribs. And so the setup that I came up with, I think actually makes the most sense if you are following along with a Series 1 and Series 2 grills, because I'm going to answer one of the most common questions that I get. Last year I did a beef tallow versus a Wagyu beef tallow, and I snuck in the fact that you could fit a Series 3 rack inside of a Series 1 and 2 grill and gain more space, and that is an accessory that I need to make today's cook come together. So let's go over to our Series 1 and Series 2, and I'll show you exactly what I came up with in terms of hanging today's ribs. Okay, so let me show you what we've got, starting with an empty Kamado Joe Big Joe Series 1. I've just cleaned this out using my Kick-Ash can so I can drop that back in place. Charcoal basket. So far everything's normal. This is the Series 1, Series 2 rack, which would give us sort of the low position and the high position. But now let me show you how the Series 3 rack fits in a Series 1 or 2 grill. So this will not work with the slow roller, but this will work with all sorts of deflectors. So if you wanted to drop your deflectors down on the ring or on the X-ring and gain some extra height, you'll see that this opens and closes without touching, no problem. So it gives us a little bit more versatility. And we are cooking about 3 inches above the felt line. Actually, I can do you one better. I have a tape measure handy, and we're just shy of 3 inches above the felt line. Actually, let me do the grid. So the grid is at 2 inches where that is showing up. So we're about 2 inches above the felt line. So now that we've covered that the Series 3 rack fits, I'm doing this again on my Series 1 and 2. As for this setup to work, you need a second divide and conquer rack. And so if you were a Series 1 and Series 2 owner and you found one of these on Facebook Marketplace or on sale, buying one of these would make a lot more sense than picking up a Series 1 or 2 divide and conquer rack if you owned the Series 3 grill. It will fit and work the same, but I picked this because if there is a chance of copying this crazy setup, it would be exactly what I'm doing today, as you would gain the versatility in normal cooks with the Series 3 rack. So next I'm going to take my Series 1 and 2 stock rack, flipped upside down, and drop that on the tabs of my Series 3 ring. Make sure that's nice and secure like so. And last is the Hunsaker Hanging Rib Rack kit. I originally picked this up for my Weber Smoky Mountain. Let me just show you here again that this closes without touching anything, so our temperature probe or anything like that isn't rubbing or touching. So I originally picked up this rack for a mod video for my Weber Smoky Mountain. I've done so much showing Kamado Joe accessories on the Weber Summit, whether that be the Dojo or the rotisserie or even the Series 1 and 2 divide and conquer rack to gain a little bit more versatility in something like the Weber Summit. So today is kind of going the opposite, where we have a Weber accessory inside the Kamado Joe. So this is made by Hunsaker, and if you've ever done any competition barbecue events, you will see their barrel smokers as well as Weber Smoky Mountains with a bunch of their mods installed. This is the reason why I have this, is for my Smoky Mountain and packing it up and taking it to competitions. But as you'll see here, this gives us complete versatility to take advantage of the hanging rack system inside of our Kamado Joe. Where we run into a bit of an issue is the clearance from our fire. I've done some previous hanging videos vertically where I put a meat hook on the top of my dome gauge, either through the control tower, out through the daisy wheel. I've done a chicken, I've done a tomahawk steak, and a whole bunch of other hanging cooks. And so while it absolutely works to impart the flavor, the issue that we have is the height to our fire. fire. And so this rack system right now, if I remove my smokeware cap and drop the measuring tape down in here, I am just about 3.5 inches from where we're touching the rack to the top of our dome. So we're getting pretty close up to the top. But despite being close to the top, even when I've hung racks from the top of my dome, is we don't have the clearance from the fire to get away with long cuts. So even things like that tomahawk steak, I'm about 16 inches and we are touching fire. So anything that would be down here is going to be at risk of burning. And so my game plan for today, using the rack system from Hunsaker, will be actually to hang our racks sideways like this, and we'll be able to fit, I've got 4 racks today for the test. I think based off of my measuring, we could get as many as 6 on here, and we are going to have the clearance from our fire to not, hopefully, run into any of those burning issues. So let's get a little bit more charcoal, grab our grill blazer, grill gun. I'm gonna bury a bit of smoking wood underneath the charcoal like always, and let this come up to temperature around 270 degrees. If you are ever struggling with 270 degrees, I'll show you the setting that I'm using today on my smokeware cap, but I also have a vent guide on the website that shows every common temperature on the daisy wheel, the control tower top, as well as the smokeware chimney cap that I'm using on my Joe Jr. and Series 1, and I have that resource available on Joe Jr. Classic, Big Joe, Series 1, 2, and 3 if you're struggling with any temperatures, but I'll show you exactly how I've set up for today's cook in order to hold 270 degrees Fahrenheit. So while our grill is coming up to temperature, I can install the meat hooks that we're going to hang these off of. On the website, Hunsaker has a couple options. They have these thinner profile hooks, which I'm going to go with today, as I have 12 of those. I'm going to use 2 on each rack so we can get nice even hanging. But they also have these heavier duty hooks. If I was hanging something heavier like little roaster chickens or something like that, this is what I would go with. But the thin hooks will be more than enough for hanging our St. Louis racks of ribs. So let's bring the rack over here and show you what that'll look like. And so I'm just going to push this through, fast forward each of our racks of ribs so that we are able to hang. And I'll meet you back over by the grill. Okay, our temperatures are coming up. Don't be alarmed by the 400 degrees Fahrenheit. If I can hold my hands here completely comfortable for more than 5 seconds, we're not anywhere close to the 400 degrees that our dome temperature gauge is saying. What's going on is we've got a bit of a flame that's just coming up, like you can see here, and that is causing that to read a little higher. But I do want to start slowing things down now so we don't have a raging fire. So first I'm going to do is drop on my smokeware cap and take that down to about 3/4 of an inch, which I would always measure on the side instead of the front, as the front has this little tab which is giving you what looks like a smaller measurement. So we'll come back to this for our final vent settings, but for now I want about 3/4 of an inch on the top and down to 1 finger on the bottom draft door. So we are locked and loaded. I went, normally my vent setting on the smokeware cap in an indirect setup is for a 1/2 inch for 270 degrees. I'm more like 1/3 on our direct setup, since we don't have the heat deflector redirecting any of that heat and needing a little bit more air to get that type of temperature up near the dome. So a slight reduction down to about 1/3 of an inch is giving us exactly what we need for 270 degrees. So the game plan is just to let these smoke. I've got some apple cider vinegar diluted 50% apple cider vinegar, 50% water in a spray bottle ready to go for a little bit later on if I start to see any dryness. So while I might have to wait a couple hours for the next update and or a taste test for you, it'll feel just like that. Okay, our ribs have been in the smoke now for 2 hours, and so I want to transfer them now that we're seeing temps of around 170 degrees Fahrenheit, using my Chef's Temp Final Touch X10 in order to get a temperature reading on all of our ribs. I want to move to foil. So I'm just going to use a little bit of barbecue sauce diluted with some apple juice, and then add about the equivalent of 2 tablespoons of apple juice to our foil packets. Wrap those up nice and tight. We can now take out our rib hanging rack and install our OEM Kamado Joe grates for the final hour of our cook. Then once those are now tender, we will finish them up by tacking them up with some sauce and be ready for our taste test. Well, these look absolutely amazing. I've got a plate set aside for some samples for our taste test. I'm going to get everything else onto a pan and then wrap that in foil, as we are taking these to a neighbor's for our birthday party, but they look absolutely fantastic. So I'll take you fast forward and rejoin you with a couple for our taste test. Cheers. Wow, what did we just make? Oh my gosh, lights out. I'm glad I brought two. These are amazing, and I'm hungry. Cheers. Flavor's amazing, smoke's amazing. So how do I explain what is going on the taste buds here, which I wish I could share? I have plenty. There's 4 racks. Maybe there'd be plenty to go around. But first, this is a symphony of flavors. This is finishing with a sweet taste of our sauce that we cut with some apple juice. But underneath that, I'm getting a little bit of the kick from the cayenne and those red pepper flakes in our ultimate SPG rub. So there's a little bit of heat mellowing out with some of the sweet from our sauce. And then there's the smoke and the texture. And there is always something. Outside of a brisket, the only thing that has not worked when I tried the rotisserie direct fire brisket, everything else on the rotisserie or live fire just imparts something you don't get when you add all the baffles and deflector plates and sole rollers and everything between the fire and your food. And normally the proximity to the food is something that we have to avoid, but I'm really pleased with how this setup came together in terms of getting us up and away from those flames. I don't have any dry, crispy, or overdone parts, and I'm pleased to report this is a 2 thumbs up attempt at modifying our Big Joe Series 1 using the Big Joe Series 3 Divide and Conquer rack along with the Weber Smoky Mountain. Wow, that was a mouthful of parts. So I'll put the pricing up on screen in terms of what this would add, as this is not cheap. So answering a couple questions. Is it cheap? No. Does it work? Yes. Is it awesome? Double thumbs up, yes. So depending on where you are in terms of your quest to get more out of your Joe and live fire grilling, this is absolutely possible. So if you found someone selling a used Divide and Conquer rack, or they came on sale, I would absolutely look at adding this to my arsenal. And even knowing that I could fit even more on that rack and get even more capacity, I'm going to give this, again, as I said, 2 thumbs up. That's it for today. If you've got any questions about this cook or any others that I've done and you don't want to wait for the next pre-recorded video, make sure you jump on the Members Live next one, and you can ask me your questions in real time versus these pre-recorded videos. That's it for today, though. I'm James from Smoking That Barbecue signing off. Remember, don't be afraid to fire it up. I want another rib. Let's go get one.